Welcome to Stetson Law Live. Our host today, Dean of Admissions and Student Financial Planning, Laura Zuppo. And her guest, Professor Ellen Podgore. Our topic today, the JD admissions process. Using Ustream's chat feature, you can have your questions answered in real time. Thanks for joining us today. And now, here's Laura Zuppo.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for tuning in to our chat about the JD admissions process. Once again, my name is Laura Zuppo. I am Assistant Dean of Admissions and Student Financial Planning here at Stetson. I've worked at Stetson for going on 14 years, and let me tell you, it's been a wonderful journey, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. I think over the next hour, you'll hear a lot about Stetson, and I really encourage you, if you haven't already visited, to please do so. I'd like to introduce my guest today. It's my good friend and colleague, Professor Ellen Podgore. She is also the chair of our Faculty Admissions Committee. Ellen?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, Dean Zuppo. I'm delighted to talk with you all. I hope to get to meet you when you're on campus here. Please stop by. Stetson is one of the most beautiful campuses you could ever imagine in the United States. And we really are a campus where we're inviting to all individuals, and we want you to come by and meet us and talk to you about our law school, because this is a law school that is a very personal sort of a place. It's a place where you can be comfortable. It's a place where you can learn about the law, and we have just a very unusual setup in the sense that we have so many programs, so many clinics, and so many everything here at the law school. So I hope to be meeting you shortly.
That's actually a good segue. I'd like to spend a few minutes sort of telling you about the protocol for today. We want this to be fun, hopefully interactive, and that's where all of you come in who are watching. Over the course of the next hour, people will log in, log out, but the goal is to have you ask questions. Of course, we've come prepared with a list of things we want to talk about, but we want you to chime in and ask us those things that you really can't get from reading the website or the view book. Now, first, let me tell you a little bit about Stetson and Stetson's history. I will just, first of all, brag that we probably have one of the most beautiful law school campuses in the country, and it's actually a historic property. Back in 1924, this was actually a resort hotel. Going back even farther, Stetson University College of Law is the oldest law school in the state. We were founded in 1900. Shortly thereafter, the University of Florida School of Law opened up. In 1908, the first woman to earn a JD in the state of Florida graduated from Stetson University College of Law. We are a school of first, the first school with a clinical program, the first school to require pro bono service of its students, and on and on. And we are really proud of all of the things that we've done to break ground in this state and nationally with respect to our legal education and our training. We offer full-time and part-time legal education. We have a satellite law center in the heart of downtown Tampa, which also is the seat for the 2nd District Court of Appeal, and has a second law library for our students and our alumni and judiciary. So now, what I would like to do is ask Professor Podgore a bunch of questions to get us going. I want to start with her areas of expertise. She is a gem, and I think that you'll find after the program is over that she's somebody you're going to want to know and hopefully take crim law with. So, Professor Podgore, would you please share your educational background, what kind of practice you did, what you teach, and maybe your biggest passion in terms of teaching and practice?
Okay, I'm going to start with the last question, and that is my biggest passion is I love to teach. I absolutely love the students at Stetson, and they are what make this law school what it is. I had the opportunity to go to law school a good number of years ago, but had an opportunity to not only attend and get my JD degree initially at Indiana University at Indianapolis, but then go back and get an LLM degree at Temple University School of Law. Because I specialize in the area of white-collar crime, I also have an MBA degree from University of Chicago. My original degree in Bachelor of Science was from Syracuse University. And I've had a wide array of different studies that have led me to the area of white-collar crime, but a lot of it come from the corporate area. But I also practice law. I practiced for a good number of years. I was a deputy prosecutor, and then I was a criminal defense attorney. I have tried cases from murders, rapes, robberies, you name it, I have prosecuted it. I have also defended cases, people who have been charged with homicide, people who've been charged with white-collar crime. I have represented individuals who are both lawyers and judges. And so I bring to the table a lot more than you might see at other law schools where you have academics who have written a lot of articles, which I've done also. But I also have that real-world experience, and that's very important to us here at Stetson. We think the real-world experience really helps in making an individual a very good lawyer, and that's what we want to train. We want to train very good lawyers here.
Would you say, Professor Podgore, that the majority, vast majority, a small portion of our faculty have that real-world experience? What would you say is the composition?
I would say it's very different from many places in the sense that almost everybody on this faculty has practiced law and has practiced law for a good number of years. And what's fascinating about it, Dean Zuppo, is that the faculty has such a different background in the sense that we have some that have done clerkships in appellate courts, we have some that have gone into major law firms, and we have some that have worked in small law firms. We have some that have worked for the government, such as the Department of Justice, and have gone through the honors program at the Department of Justice, which is one way you can get into the Department of Justice coming straight from law school. And we have other individuals that have worked in other agencies within the government. So we have just a very wide array of different areas of practice that the faculty have done here.
I think it's interesting because it helps with the mentoring. Students and faculty tend to form a pretty strong bond as they go through their program here, and faculty here take a pretty active role in mentoring our students, and not just in the short term but also long term. I know so many of the alumni come back and they seek you out and they talk to you about their careers. There's something that you do that's a little bit different. You meet with your students and have lunchtime review sessions and discussions. Could you tell us about that?
Absolutely. And I'm not the only one who does that here. There are several faculty here. So in my first year criminal law class, we have brown bag lunches, and we meet in groups of anywhere from 5 to 8 students. And throughout the entire semester, I try to meet with every single one of the students for lunch. In addition to that, I also give a practice midterm in the first year because it's a different type of studying that you do in law school, and it's good to have the experience of seeing what it's like, trying it out, and getting some feedback before that final exam. And so what I do is I meet with each one of my students in my first year criminal law class. We go through their midterm together, a midterm that doesn't count, so that they have the opportunity to get that educational experience right from the start.
I think that's really helpful. And for those of you who are watching and listening right now, I think it sends a message that this is not an intense, intimidating, cutthroat environment. Stetson's really well known for being a community that has engaged faculty, engaged students, and is very warm and caring. And I think some of the things like brown bag lunches actually show that. Now, I see that we have about 13 to 15 people who are logged in right about now, something like that. 22. Okay. All right, this is your session. This is all about you and what you want to get out of it. So I'm going to challenge everybody to think of a question that they would like to ask us. The topic today, as a refresher, is about the admissions process. We're just trying to get you guys warmed up a little and a little bit engaged, so I'm going to switch modes and I'm going to talk about the admissions process. But I would like to hear from you. My first question I'm going to ask you as an audience, where are you all from? Who is from anywhere besides Florida? Who here is from Florida, and where in Florida are you? So let's see you type some answers in there. We'll make sure our technology is working. And meanwhile, I'm going to start asking Professor Podgore some questions about the admissions process and the application. I have a little cheat sheet here in case you guys don't ask anything. So the first thing that I want to ask about is the LSAT. Can you just give me a sense and your own experience? Because this is something that I think is really a concern for our prospective students. Does the LSAT really predict if you're going to be, at the top of the class, in the middle, at the bottom? I mean, in your experience as a professor, do you feel that once they get there, the LSAT is sort of...
I have no idea what LSATs my students have.
And I'm glad you said that. I'm sorry to interrupt, but students think that the professors actually know their LSAT once they enroll, and I'm glad you can confirm that's not true.
I have no idea what LSAT they have, and you know something? I don't care, and I don't want to know. What's important to me is, do they want to learn, and do they want to be a lawyer? And what kind of lawyer do they want to be? Do they want to represent clients? As a lawyer, you're going to solve problems for people. You're going to serve as an advocate for individuals. And I want to teach you how to be a really good advocate for individuals. And that's what is really important here. Not what kind of score you got on an exam. I'm not going to say the LSAT isn't important. It's important. We look at the LSAT in the admissions process. We look at grades in the admissions process. But once you're here, what's important is that you learn the law, and that you learn to be an ethical, professional lawyer, that you learn that you're entering a profession, that you're going to be amongst a society of individuals who can go out and do something for the rest of the world and help them.
Absolutely. And that actually leads me into one of the most difficult areas of the admissions process, and that's the personal statement. So Professor Podgore touched on something so important. Whether you're applying to Stetson or somewhere else, it's really important that you convey your passion for the study and practice of law in your personal statement. There is honestly nothing worse than reading a personal statement where you're not sure if the person wants to be a social worker, an MBA, a JD. It's so generic. Do you find that when you read personal statements, you can really identify that passion for law in the personal statement? How important is that statement to you?
That statement is probably the most important thing when I read a file. And the reason why it's so important to me is it tells me about that individual. It tells me if they really want to be a lawyer, if they're concerned about the legal profession, if they're concerned and interested in helping clients. And it also tells me something about their philosophy on life and things that are important to them. We want people who have a good balance on what's important in life and want to go out and help individuals. So I think the personal statement tells me that about them. It tells me things about the activities they're involved in or what's important to them. And I like to have a very diverse class. I like to have very different activities. I'm not looking for something that's a cookie cutter type of a thing where it's one particular activity or one particular thing that they've done in their life. I want to have a lot of different things there, and that's what I'm looking for.
I think that that's important to me as well. In addition to the passion, the experiences, and the fact that someone's done their research, I'm also looking at the quality of writing in the personal statement. And we really want to see that you've taken the time to submit a polished professional piece and that you've edited that piece significantly. Now, we actually have our first question, and I'm excited. Thank you, for DJP. DJ has a couple of questions here. Is there a difference between the full-time and part-time program, and is there a separate application? So taking this back to the JD process and how it all works, when you log into the LSAC JD Credential Assembly Service account that you create, and you select Stetson as one of your schools, you will have a question that asks you, which program do you wish to, apply for, full-time, part-time? You must pick one. Now, if you are open to either, you can convey that to us via email or telephone call. And then we would consider you for the initial program. And then if perhaps down the road you were interested in converting, we would have that conversation and I would send you before committee for subsequent review. But there is not a separate application. It's the same application. But if you are looking at part-time, I really, really want to make sure that you enclose a resume, especially if you're a non-traditional student with a lot of work and life experiences. Resumes are really helpful. And Full-time students, I love a resume because there's so much in a resume that you can't get from any other part of the application. All right, so, and you're from Kentucky. Okay, fantastic. So DJ, I'm gonna go ahead and finish answering your questions here. Tell me a little bit about the application process and how to appropriately highlight your resume in the process. The first thing I will tell you, and this goes for anyone, don't worry about keeping it all to one page. I know the conventional advice for a job, especially if you're more traditional age, is to have a one-page resume. When you are applying to law schools, folks, it's okay to have a two-page resume. My favorite piece of advice to give people is this. Make sure it's in a font size that we can read on a PDF. So don't cram it into a 9-point. Don't cram it into a 10-point. Make it 11 or 12-point font, and if it goes to 2 pages, so be it. This is your chance to highlight your major and minor accomplishments. If you were selected for an honor, an award, Employee of the Year, if you work with a church group or other community organization, this is your chance to really highlight all that you do and have done that makes you who you are. The physical application itself doesn't give you very much space. There's about a block this big, and that's all the space you have to tell us about your extra and co-curricular activities. And for the vast majority of you, you are so engaged at your school, in your community, with your children's organizations, that little block cannot possibly take all of that information. So the resume can really help you expand on your accomplishments and passions. The thing about the application process is that it's all electronic. And I'm going to spend just a few minutes, if you don't mind, Professor Podgore, and give a high-level summary of how it works. Hopefully that will help the vast majority of you. So as I said, you log into LSAC's Credential Assembly Service, okay, and you create an account. And then you list the schools to which you plan to apply. You're going to fill out some basic biographical information, and then from there, every school to which you apply will get that basic biographical info. It's called a standard question. Schools also have custom questions, and Stetson, of course, has several of those. So you'll fill out the application, you will upload your personal statement, you upload your resume. If you have an addendum for something, such as a misdemeanor or perhaps a rocky semester where you didn't do so well, you can upload that. You will then contact your colleges, universities, and have them send transcripts to LSAC. You will also seek letters of recommendation. They will likely upload them to LSAC. So really, there's very little paper that's involved in this process. Once everything is in, your LSAT, the transcripts, the letters, your personal statement, your resume, your application, you can then be reviewed by the school's faculty committee. And in most cases, it's a faculty committee. Some schools, it's only professional staff, but it's Stetson and many other institutions. We want our faculty involved in selecting their class because they're teaching you. And then the schools will typically send you the an email or a mail piece. So with the decision, admit, deny, waitlist. That is a very high level summary of how the process works. So I would like to talk a little bit about each piece if you guys want. I'm going to take a transcript question from Sophia. And Sophia says, I'm from Tampa, but the transcript is from another country and it is difficult to get it. What do you suggest about that? Sophia, I think in a case like this, I would love to have a one-on-one with you. We have about 5 different agencies, if you're a foreign attorney, that would be able to evaluate your credentials. But if you are not a foreign attorney, but you're educated in a foreign country and have the equivalent of a bachelor's in the foreign country, then you really only have one option. And I would like to spend some one-on-one time with you. At the end of the program, my email will come up, but I'm going to tell it to you now. Actually, Carmen, would you be so kind as to type my email in? And Sophia, get my email, copy paste it, and then send me a note, and we can set up a time to talk, okay? Great. So it looks like we have people from Missouri. We have originally a New Jersey person, Kentucky, Brandon, Tampa, and Northport. I'm so glad that you guys are chiming in and asking some great questions. So DJ has another follow-up question, and I'm going to ask Professor Podgore to take this one. She briefly touched on it, but I think I'm going to have her expand on it. In your opinion, what is the most important part of the application and why?
To me, the most important part of the application is the essay, by far. I mean, when I read an essay, I feel like I get to know the individual beside their numbers. I can look at their transcript, see what courses they've taken. I can look at an LSAT. I can see their GPA and whether they've been successful in their undergraduate school. But when I read the essay, I find out about them. And as you said before, Dean Zuppo, I also see if they took care in writing that essay. I mean, if there's grammatical mistakes, if there's spelling mistakes in an essay, that says something to me. That's not a positive thing. On the other hand, when they tell me a story about how they got to where they got to, what's important to them, I mean, what activities they were involved with in undergraduate school, what types of things they have done in their life so far, what kind of community service they've done. Have they participated in different programs in their local community? Have they spent time helping others who might not be as fortunate as them? I mean, that's the kind of thing that tells me who this individual is. Is this individual dedicated to society? Is this individual somebody who's going to make a difference in society? Is this somebody who, when we give them a law degree, we can be proud of them? We can feel that this is somebody who's part of the Stetson community and is going to go out and make a difference and is going to represent their clients effectively. That's really important. And I think the essay tells me so much of that story.
I have that same response. When I read a file, the essay is really my favorite part. The resume, and we brought this up a few minutes ago, but the resume is really important to me too, because I get to see about all of your uniqueness, if that's our word. I get to see all of the different things you're interested in and the passions. Stetson has a 60-hour pro bono requirement. And when we see that a student is applying who has a passion for volunteerism, we know they would be a pretty good fit here at Stetson because we do want you to give back to the community. You know, the other thing that I really like to look at is the transcript. I like to look at the mix of courses, the level of difficulty of courses. I like to see what kinds of math courses, if someone's taken logic, philosophy, English. I like to see all of the different things you've done academically. How do you feel about a transcript? And in particular, Professor, if you have a transcript that has maybe one rocky semester or two rocky semesters, what is your opinion? How do you review that? Maybe some advice to a candidate who's coming to us with a blip on the radar screen.
Life happens, and everybody goes through life issues, especially during a period of time when you're in undergraduate school or graduate school. And so if you've got a semester that isn't the most stellar semester, it's nice to tell me that. Give me an explanation. Tell me what happened during that semester, why you weren't at your best. Give me some explanation as to why I should not put emphasis on that particular semester. That's helpful to me to know. I want as much information as I can possibly have as to what your strengths are, what you have to offer us. And so if there is something that is negative in some way in your transcript or in the courses that you took, or in a course, one particular course, or just a whole semester or a whole year. I mean, many people, when they start out in undergraduate school, it can go through a difficult transition. Mm-hmm. You might not have understood exactly what was required of you, or you might be away from home for the first time, or you might be dealing with new issues in life. I mean, tell me that. I think that's something, if I see improvement in an individual, then that to me, I may discredit the entire first year because of the improvement that they've had in the third year or the fourth year. On the other hand, if you suddenly went down one semester because of something that's happening, maybe there's an illness in the family, maybe there's something going on in your home life that caused that to happen. If I know about that, I may not want to use that in the part of my evaluation process.
Absolutely. I think that's really important. And Stetson has built into our online application a miscellaneous upload section so you can attach those explanations. Please, please explain these things. Don't just assume we know what's going on in your life. I think you can tell it's a human process. There are people actually reading what you send here at Stetson. So take advantage of that and tell us about your experiences. We have a couple of great questions that are along this line, and one of them is about graduate transcripts. Do we look at graduate transcripts in addition to the undergrad? And then can a high graduate school GPA offset a lower undergrad GPA? So I'd like to throw that at you, Professor.
Absolutely, positively, yes. The very fact that you went to graduate school, the very fact that you have an interest in furthering your education, and especially if it's in some area that might be beneficial if you eventually go into the practice of law. For example, if you're going to become a patent attorney and you take some advanced degree in the science area, that's going to be a huge enhancement to your file. And I mean, if your grades might be lower in science because really your aptitude is in the law, that's going to be noticeable also. So I think just having an advanced degree is something important, and showing a differential. Maybe you're going back to school and now you suddenly realize school's important, and it makes a difference in life to perform well and to show that you can perform well. So I think, yes, definitely, your grades in a graduate program can make a difference.
For me, they make a difference also in the fact that a lot of times we have students coming to us 5, 10, 15 years after college, and the student they were at that time isn't necessarily the student they are today. And a lot of people go back and they get a graduate degree and work really, really hard and learn so much and improve as a student. And when we're evaluating your record as a whole, I focus, at least myself, and I think that I can speak for the committee, I really look at how well you performed at the advanced level, where I know the curriculum is more rigorous. I know the amount of reading and papers is going to be more demanding. And so we definitely take a look at that, especially when we have somebody who is, a lot of times in our part-time program, has been out of school for 10, 15, 20, 25 years. That is definitely important to us. So I will tell you, we get a lot of people with graduate degrees going back to law school. I typically have about 25% of the part-time class with a graduate degree, and sometimes up to 10% of the full-time class with a grad degree. So if that's you, just know you're not alone, okay? Now, we have the final question here, and actually, okay, Lee asks, do we look at the cumulative GPA, or will the GPA in the major be taken into account? Now, I'd like to just talk a little bit about how things work with respect to data. All law schools are required to report the first earned bachelor's degree cumulative GPA. We look at the major GPA, we look at each year of enrollment, that GPA, we look at the graduate school GPA. But in terms of what we must report to the American Bar Association, it's the bachelor's degree cum. Professor Podgor, how do you weigh the overall versus the versus the major GPA, or do you even look at the difference?
I do. And the reason I look at the difference is because people come in with such a wide array of different courses they've taken. I mean, some individuals will have taken very difficult English courses or science courses or government or economics. And so the grades in the particular area, they may have a wider breadth of courses they've taken, and their GPA might not be as high. But then if I look at the actual area that they studied, it may be enormously high. And looking at the differential between the two tells me a lot about them. It tells me that when they're focused on the area that's really important to them, they do extremely well. And on the other hand, I don't want you to shy away from taking a wide array of courses, because I think that is helpful in your overall practice of law, to have as wide of an array of different types of things that you have studied. I think that's enormously helpful eventually in the practice of law.
Well, and I think sometimes it's fun. For me, I look at it and you can really see the students' passion for their major, and you can really see that they just fell in love with their particular major. So we're going to take a 2-minute break. We actually have a video that we've prepared for you. It's about 2 minutes, and then we're going to come back, and I would love to see some more questions from you. If you don't have questions about the application process, ask about anything you want, and we will take care of answering it. Stan?
My best experience at Stetson so far has been interacting with students and getting to know their passions for law.
The best part of Stetson thus far for me has been my trial advocacy class. My professor taught me skills that will last the rest of my life.
The thing I've enjoyed most about my Stetson experience was the first-year student opening statement competition. I mean, it was my first time being in the courtroom and advocating, and the best part for me was that I was able to do it in front of my parents who came down all the way from Buffalo. That opportunity opened countless number of doors after that.
The thing that I've enjoyed the most about my experience at Stetson is the professors. They have clearly excelled in their expertise outside of academia, but they deliver their experiences into the classroom so personally. They are true servant scholars.
My favorite experience has been traveling with the Stetson trial team and also training with the trial team. I feel like I have learned an enormous amount just by being a member of the Stetson trial team.
One of my favorite experiences at Stetson has been becoming a Stetson ambassador and welcoming visitors to the campus.
I've really enjoyed my pro bono experience here at Stetson. I got to work with the Salvation Army and do resume workshops for people who are re-entering the workforce.
So far at Stetson, I've really enjoyed the classroom experience as well as the different advocacy competitions.
I've really enjoyed being a member of Moot Court Board since I've been at Stetson. It's really fun to work on briefs with team members and then go compete in oral arguments.
My favorite experience here at Stetson has been the opportunity to get involved with student organizations on campus, such as Phi Alpha Delta and the Environmental Law Society.
One of my favorite things about Stetson has been the opportunity to be able to intern and clerk outside of my formal legal education.
Stetson is all about a community and the collaboration. Faculty, staff, fellow students, and alumni all work together to help you to achieve success.
I really enjoyed taking part in the appellant advocacy competition, which allowed me to gain some real-life courtroom experience.
My favorite experience at Stetson has been the Moot Court program. Practicing real-world advocacy skills, you can't really get that experience anywhere else.
Stetson is the oldest law school in Florida, and the campus is really beautiful.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that little video of our students. I was laughing as I'm watching the video because here we see our beautiful palm trees and our amazing sunny Florida location, and I'm in a sweater and Professor Podgore is in a mock turtleneck. It's actually about 67 or 68 degrees out, but it's really cold here in our studio, so we had to dress warmly for the occasion. But I'll have to take this off as soon as I go outside. About scholarships, and this is such an important question, and I hope that all of you who are watching, I think we're at 32 now, are paying attention to this. Scholarships. The first thing I want to tell you, there's no separate application at Stetson, but there might be for some other schools. You need to apply to your schools early, folks. The old adage, the early bird gets the worm, that applies to scholarship dollars at most places. The earlier in the cycle you apply, the more funds are available. And the schools have to become less and less generous as the cycle progresses. So really, if you are waiting to submit your application for whatever reason, just get it done, okay? Especially if everything else is in. Put the final touches on it and submit it. Now, I'd like to ask Professor Podgore about scholarships, and in particular what Stetson really looks at when we're considering for scholarships.
And I think it's a host of different criteria. First of all, I mean, it depends on the specific scholarship that's involved. There are some scholarships that are need-based. There are some scholarships, just general scholarships, and in which case we're looking for things such as how the person did in their undergraduate school, what they offer to us. And when I say what they offer to us, I mean, I'm looking for a class of individuals, again, who really are going to offer to be good lawyers out there. And I think that's what's the most important, and to be able to show us that you're going to be a great lawyer and why you're going to be a great lawyer, and that you have performed well in the past, to show that you could continue to perform well in that regard. I think that's an important factor to look at for scholarships.
Absolutely. And I'm going to take it to the more technical area from there. First of all, we consider scholarships at the same time we vote for an admission offer. So we will award you based primarily on your LSAT and GPA, but we do happen to have other scholarship funding that looks at the application. We do take into account if you have some character and fitness issues. That could be a problem in terms of scholarshiping. So if you do have some character and fitness issues, and that's what I also call a blip on the radar screen, and it's something we can talk about. But for Stetson, they're awarded at the time of admission, no separate scholarship. If you believe you can contribute to the diversity of the Stetson environment as well as the legal profession, perhaps you've overcome significant adversity in life, you are welcome to attach a diversity statement telling us a little bit more about those experiences and your future contributions. We read that, we consider that, and we're very fortunate to have funding that can recognize our diverse population of students. We want to bring in a very diverse class, from folks who are foreign educated attorneys to people who've come from different parts of the country, to our racial and ethnic diversity, etc. And I will tell you that I'm very fortunate to work at a school that really focuses on crafting a well-rounded class. Was there anything else you'd like possibly to share about scholarships, in particular, Professor Podgore? I mean, I know one thing I would say is we're not a school that offers them and takes them back.
And that's very important. I mean, I think you ought to consider that in your, evaluations of law schools. You have many choices. And I think looking at the statistics and looking at what actually goes on in those schools is an important consideration for you. I mean, we're at a school here where we want our students to succeed. So when we admit a student, we want that student to not only succeed in that class, but to succeed overall as an attorney and become an attorney. So we make a concerted effort. We have an academic success, a whole workshop here, a whole program here. It is fully staffed, and it's a group of individuals who, if there's a problem, if you're not quite getting something, if you feel that you need some assistance, you can go to them, get some support. And I think we want to make certain that every student succeeds here. That's the philosophy. I know when I went to law school, one of the things that they started with was look to your right and look to your left. Somebody isn't going to be there after the first semester. We don't do that here. You know what I say to my students? I say, look to your right and look to your left, and make sure you get to know them really well, so that if they get appointed to be President of the United States, they appoint you to the Supreme Court.
I love that. It is true. It's funny how many folks you see them years later after they graduate, and they talk about how they still keep in touch with their classmates and they refer business to one another. It's really, I mean, this is the beginning of your professional career, and you build amazing lifelong friendships and relationships with your classmates. DJ has a great question, and thank you for being so helpful, DJ. I would say, let's look at this. What should I do if I have a low LSAT score or GPA? Any tips on how to make myself stand out? Typically, if somebody has a low LSAT, we'll often see that they have a pretty high GPA, or conversely, they might have a low GPA and a higher LSAT. I like to use a seesaw analogy. We all know what a seesaw is, right? I know I'm being a little silly here, but it's probably the best visual. If you have something that's kind of holding you down or weighing you down, it's really important that the rest of your file be very, very strong, and that creates a bit of a balance. So if your LSAT is a little bit low, and perhaps you've considered taking it again, you take it again, maybe it goes up a point or two, but not where you want it to be, but your GPA is really strong, you need to make sure you have a very well written personal statement, a strong resume, that you have outstanding letters of recommendation, and that all of those other things help balance out the one weaker number. It will not work in all cases, but in many cases, I'll have somebody with a 3.8 or 3.9 GPA and maybe a 151 or 152, and they'll have really great extracurricular activities. They've been on trial team at their college, mock trial, great letters, whatever, and that helps balance it out. Because it's not just about the numbers, guys. There's so much more that goes into admitting and crafting a class, and that's why I keep using that term. Professor, how about you? What's your take on that?
Can I add something
Absolutely.
more to that? You know, sometimes a person is not a good test taker, and they just don't do well on those exams, and they may have had a very poor SAT score. And you may want to highlight that. You may want to bring that out. If you have really strong grades and a really poor SAT score initially, and you didn't do very well on the LSAT, tell me that. Tell me the fact that this is not your highlight. You just don't do well on those types of exams, but you perform extremely well in the classroom. And that way I can see that this is just somebody that maybe I want to put less emphasis on the LSAT and more emphasis on the GPA.
Absolutely. And while we're on the subject of the LSAT, I actually think it's really important that we talk about LSAT preparation. Is anybody watching today planning to take the February LSAT? And if you are, would you be willing to just chime in on how you're preparing, whether you're taking a course, individual study, are you doing an online program of study, did you hire a tutor, etc.? And Professor Podgore, I'm going to ask you, what are your thoughts on the preparation process over your years of teaching and your own experience with the LSAT? What do you think in terms of the preparation?
I think it's important you do the preparation, okay? It's important for everybody, not only you, but for our law school, that we have students who have come in and learned certain skills. And the LSAT and the preparation for the law school is teaching you some skills. Some of the skills are things that deal with a philosophical type of an approach to things. So a philosophy course and a logic course can sometimes help you learn those skills. But it's also the process of trying to develop that skill within yourself, because it's a skill you will need to use in law school. And so getting it while in the process of taking the exam, I think is pretty important to do also. So spend the time on it. Don't just say, oh, I'll go with the high GPA and the lower LSAT. Spend the time and show us. Show us that you've improved on the LSAT. Show us that you can study and actually master this particular test.
Well, and I think that's really good advice. Barrett just chimed in and said that Barrett took the test the first time in December and used the Kaplan book. We have a lot of students who use Kaplan. They use Princeton Reviews materials, Testmaster. Blackstone is a wonderful regional program. And PowerScore, thank you, ATA, ATTAC, I think. I'm glad that you chimed in. PowerScore is another one. And the best, and I'm glad you put this up there, LSAC has some amazing booklets that you can get for a really inexpensive price. And what I really like about them is the actual people who write and who come up with the questions for the LSAT are the ones, that you really should study from. So they're the ones who they're called psychometricians, and they're the ones who create all these crazy games and everything. You can get the test or practice test directly from LSAC, whereas when you go with a commercial company, it's a different set of psychometricians who are creating those practice tests. So I really encourage you to take a look at LSAC's. Blueprint. Now, I've never actually heard of Blueprint. Is that a web book? I'm going to ask Mullinax to go ahead and chime in and tell us more about Blueprint. Have you ever heard of Blueprint?
I haven't.
No, I haven't heard of it. As you can see from the responses, folks, there are so many different companies and ways to study. The bottom line is, in my going on 14 years here at Stetson, I have never met a person who took it without studying just to see how they would do, who got their ideal score. Okay? You must put time and practice into it. And whether it's an online course, thank you, Mr. or Mrs. Mullinax, for telling us that Blueprint's an online course. Whether it's online or you get a tutor, you practice on your own, or you take a regular in-class program, you have to practice. Most people give themselves 2 to 3 months to study, and they take 6 to 8 full-length timed exams, typically at the high end, and then you see that they take the exam thereafter. Now, question: does Stetson accept the February and June LSAT examinations? How do you see things today, Professor, in terms of the timeline versus maybe 5 or 10 years ago in terms of a February or June LSAT?
Well, 5 or 10 years ago, I mean, the cutoff dates were a lot stricter. The application process, if you didn't have it in by a certain time, was a lot stricter. Now it's a little bit more open, and so taking a later LSAT or taking an LSAT again is a possibility. But I also have to reiterate something you said, and that is our class fills up, and our scholarship money fills up. And so the sooner you get it into us is going to be the most important aspect too.
Absolutely. And Stetson does accept February's LSAT. Our deadline is May 15th. However, if you are taking the June exam, we will accept that, but you have to get your materials in by May 15th. I know that there are some students sometimes who are involved with AmeriCorps, Teach for America, Peace Corps, and they cannot get their materials in or take the LSAT where they're stationed, so they need to take a June test. We will accept it, but we really strongly encourage all of you to do your best to make sure you get your exam in by February at the latest for a fall entry. I have a couple of other questions that I've prepared that I think are important to talk about. And I want to talk about character and fitness. Now, I briefly have touched on character and fitness, and I really want to dive into it. It's not always the fun subject, but I think it's an extremely important subject. So, Professor Podgore, as our criminal law faculty member, why don't you tell us a little bit about what the term character and fitness means here at Stetson, but maybe for the bar as well?
Okay. So character and fitness is looking at, are you an individual who we can trust with clients? Are you somebody who's going to be trustworthy to your clients? Is this somebody who has a character that's ethical, who's going to be professional? Or is this somebody who's had some run-ins with the law in the past? Now, there are many who have run-ins with the law in the past, and that doesn't mean that they're not going to be a good attorney. I mean, the whole purpose behind our criminal justice system is if you make a mistake, you learn from that mistake, you move on, you correct it, and you don't do it again. And so we look at those things. I mean, if there are blimps, as you call them, in the process, you know, that happens. That happens as a part of life sometimes. And that's something we have to evaluate in the process. If this is an individual who continually has problems not abiding by rules, the law is based upon rules. And if you are someone who can't adapt to those rules and be a part of those rules, it could be a problem in becoming a lawyer.
And just to expand on that, and I really appreciate that, I'm going to give you just a few takeaway points. Here are a few things that I learned from an attorney who actually represents people who are trying to get into the bar exam, the Florida bar here in the local area. This gentleman said that Florida in particular looks at candor, recency, patterns of negative behavior, acceptance of responsibility, and rehabilitation. So those are really the 5 key takeaways. Be honest about it, accept your part, don't be a repeat offender, and hopefully there's a separation in time, and show that you've made amends, you've given back. If it was an alcohol related charge, perhaps you've gone back and you've led workshops with high school children on the negative impact of drinking and driving, things like that. So let's move on to a question from Chester P. What kinds of programs do you have with students with ADHD that are enrolled in the dual program for the JD Master of Public Health? And just to share with you, ADHD or any other disability, we have a disability coordinator here on campus who handles accommodations for students. Now, I know that the University of South Florida, who runs our Master of Public Health portion of the dual degree, they also have a disabilities office and would help with in-class accommodations, just as we would, as well as accommodations for examinations, etc. Did you want to add on to anything, or anything I'm missing with that?
The only thing I would say is that a professor, as one who's like grading exams or anything, we don't know about those kinds of any kind of problem a student might have or any kind of disability they might have. These are things that are handled so that it doesn't have to affect the educational environment between your professor and the student, and you can always feel secure about that.
Absolutely. I know that one of the accommodations we have here at Stetson is it's called a note taker. A student, if you need, as part of your accommodations, you need note-taking assistance, somebody in the class who's doing well would be able to be a paid note taker, and they submit their notes to a particular employee, and the employee makes sure you don't know who wrote the notes and gets them to you as a student. You don't know who the note taker is, and they don't know who you are. It's a really good accommodation. Hannah has a great question. Hannah, I'm so glad you asked this. You asked a great question about coming in to help with your application. Hannah, we'd love to have you come meet with us, get to know us. It's really important that we can get to form personal relationships with our students. It helps us just in the long run. I mean, Stetson's a place about building relationships and mentoring. We don't actually offer interviews, so we would want you to be casual and come on in for a meet and greet or counseling session. But in terms of a formal interview, it would not be a formal interview. And one thing I'll say that Stetson does differently from other schools, and I'm really proud of this, it's something I really think is amazing. Our faculty committee on admissions actually sets standing office hours and meets with our prospective and admitted students Monday through Friday when classes are in session. So if you come on a Thursday, you might be able to meet with Carmen or Darren for an admissions counseling session, take a tour, sit in on a class, and meet with a member of the committee for just a Q&A, learn a little bit more about classroom expectations, about Stetson, about the practice of law, all kinds of great things. And I know, Professor, you've met with a lot of students. What would you say is sort of the most common thing they want to know about when they meet with you?
Most of the time they're interested to learn about the school itself, about what kind of, for example, clinical offerings we have, what they might be taking in their first year at law school, what kind of opportunities that there might be after law school. And these are questions we can answer.
That's really good. And, you know, I will say that one of the things that we do very well is we actually have a curriculum that really begins around mid-summer and runs until school starts. We call it the GAP curriculum. It's the gap between the time you're accepted and you graduate from college in many cases to the time you start law school. And we actually begin your orientation over summer with an online curriculum to help you get ready for law school. As part of that, there are opportunities to interact with faculty so that you can start getting your questions answered. Hannah, thanks. You have a great question about what are the biggest things to avoid in an application? I have a couple of doozies. I'm going to talk about your personal statement faux pas. Personal statement faux pas number 1 is to be sure and edit the statement and check those froms and forms and theirs and the twos. But more importantly, if you are trying to tell Stetson that we are the place you want to go to law school, then by all means don't tell Stetson that the University of Florida is your top choice for law school. I can't tell you how many times I've read a personal statement where somebody was going to just do a find and replace and change one school's name out for another and they missed one. Don't do that. We don't like that. That's very bad. The second thing that I would say in a personal statement is to, a lot of times people forget to turn off track changes, and you can see where other people have helped edit their statement, and that's a really, really bad choice. I think that the other thing would probably be a sloppy submission. More and more, I'm seeing admissions applications where people are typing in all lowercase. They're not using the appropriate periods and commas and semicolons. So a polished professional application, a very, very highly edited and professional resume, and a strong, well-edited personal statement are going to take you very, very far. And I'm going to ask Professor Podgore if there's anything she wants to add to that.
I think you hit on all the things I'd be looking at also. I mean, when I see a typographical error, a spelling error of some type, it hurts the application because it shows a lack of care in really reviewing it carefully. So take the time, do it properly, be a good lawyer in advance of being a lawyer.
Absolutely. And you have to always remember that you don't know who's answering the phone when you call your law schools. You don't know where your email is going to go. You don't know if the school's going to save your email as part of the review process. And, you know, I will tell you, I answer the phone. I work with students on email. And when you communicate with us in a professional manner and you are in the process of being reviewed, it really weighs on us. I mean, it makes a difference for me because we don't get to interview you. And so these are all things you want to take into consideration. Great question about full-time students taking classes at the Tampa Law Center. Well, I will tell you, full-timers, all of your required courses will be in Gulfport. There may be an elective or two in the evening that happens to be taught by a sitting judge or practitioner, and the only way they can teach it is if they can teach it in the evening in Tampa. Construction law or immigration law or bankruptcy, sometimes things like that, very, very narrow type of course, might be taught by a practicing attorney or judge at night in Tampa. That would really be the only time you would take a course in Tampa. I think that's pretty much it for the full-timers taking courses. I don't think there are really any other programs there.
For the full-timers, no.
Yeah.
If there's a particular course that interests them, but not for the mainstream courses that are required.
Right. Yeah, part-time students, you will actually take courses at both the Tampa Law Center and the Gulfport campus, and you need to be able to commute to both. So we just have a couple of minutes. It looks like we only have 2 or 3 minutes left to answer questions. While you're thinking of your final questions, I'm going to ask Professor Podgore if there's any kind of piece of final, a thought, a parting thought, or a final piece of advice that she'd like to share with you as we close today.
I think the one thing I would say is I hope we get a chance to meet as many of you as possible. I hope you'll come down here and visit with us, talk to a professor here, learn about us. We have so very much to offer here, and I'm looking for students that are going to add to our community. We are the oldest law school in the state of Florida, and we have a huge alumni base out there. And we want individuals who are going to be a part of that alumni base and serve the community and be an asset to us and be a person who's going to help represent people out there and do a good job at it. So I hope you'll come here and give us a chance and talk to us about what you have to offer.
And I think for me, the one final parting piece of advice that I would give is don't be afraid to contact your law schools. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone or send us an email and ask questions. Every law school has things that they like to see, and we're all a little bit different. So pick up the phone, ask to speak with a counselor, set up a phone appointment, an in-person appointment, take a tour of the school. Make sure that the law school is the best fit for you. Make sure it's a place where you can do your best work. Don't just look at the dollars, don't just look at the rank, look at the whole picture and make sure you are going to be a success at that school. And I think we're just about out of time here. We have a few seconds. I want to thank all of you for tuning in. This will end up being somewhere online. It's somewhere my mother will probably find it and watch it. We are so grateful that you took some time with us, and I hope to hear from all of you soon. And I know Stan's going to close with a final screenshot for us with our contact information. Have a very happy holiday, everyone. Take care.
Happy holiday.
Thank you for watching Stetson Law Live. For more information, send us an email or give us a call. For your convenience, our contact information will remain on screen for the next few minutes. Be sure to check our homepage often for news, information, and updates. Thanks again. We look forward to hearing from you soon.